Hey friends, it's Miss Lucinda. So this is strange and a little unusual. We're doing children's church from remote. Yeah, this is weird. Anyway, today, friends, we are going to be reading the story of Jesus calming the storm on the lake. And just for a little background, so what happened before he calms the storm is that the disciples and Jesus were, with a large crowd of people, and Jesus was preaching, and Jesus actually went up the mountain by himself, and he just spent some time alone with God, and the disciples left without Jesus to go across the lake to where they were going to go next. And while the disciples were out on the lake, there was a big storm, and wasn't like a little storm, like a little sprinkle, like it was a downpour, and they're in the middle of the lake on a little tiny boat, and they're terrified, and all of a sudden they see something coming across the lake. So this is from my children's Bible, so if you want to read along in your Bible, you'll find the story in Mark. It's in Mark 4. So I'm gonna read it. And then I have a couple other stories for you guys afterwards. Let's go. It's where Jesus has finished preaching and he went up the mountain. At evening, when the sun was setting, the disciples did as Jesus had told them. They got into the boat and started to row across the sea to Capernaum. But the wind became stronger and the waves were rough, so that the disciples were not able to row across to the other side before it became completely dark. So it was completely dark, and the wind is super strong, like a tornado. I think we talked about a tornado a couple times earlier, and it's scary. It's dark, and there's a storm, and they're in this tiny little boat. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming toward them. They were frightened. They were super scared. They were not sure who it was, and they did not know how it could happen that a person could walk on the water. But then Jesus called out, "It is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter, being Peter, cried out, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." And Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. Then the roaring of the wind began to make him afraid again. Looking at the wild waves, he began to sink. Then he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus stretched out his hand and took hold of him, and he said, "O man of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they both stepped into the boat, the wind stopped. At once the little boat was at the place toward which they were rowing, so they finally got there. And at that, the disciples worshipped Jesus and said to him, "You are certainly the Son of God." Well, let me show you the picture of what this looks like. So here is Jesus on the water. He's not as tan as he could be, because we've had this discussion. Jesus was not white. But here's Peter, and when Jesus was coming towards him, Peter got out of the boat and said, "If it's really you, God, let me come to you." And when Peter took his eyes off of Jesus and started to see all the scary stuff going on around him, like the wind and the rain and the waves, he lost sight of Jesus and he started drowning. But then when he fixed his eyes back on, when he was focused on Jesus, he was able to walk on the water too. And I think that is something we can take away from this, is when things are scary and hard, whether it's we're scared of going to a new place, or we're scared of big dogs, or we're scared of the dark, or I don't know, when I was a kid, I was kind of scared of, roller coasters, but that's not the point. I was scared of roller coasters as a kid. Whatever you're scared of, when you give that to God, I think it becomes, and you focus on that, you can pretty much face anything. You can walk on the water too. I'm going to read one more story because I don't know how long to make this, so there you go. Cool. So this is another Bible story, but it's shortened down because it's the Night Light Tales. Yeah, so let's do this thing. So this is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Try saying that 10 times fast. But basically what happened is that the Jews, the Israelites, they didn't listen to God, and they ended up getting taken over by Babylon. Don't quote me, I'm pretty sure it was Babylon. And basically the people who took them over were like, we're going to take all the people who are like healthy back to our kingdom, and we're going to make them basically worship us and like serve us. And they didn't follow God. And one day the king basically wanted everybody to bow down to a gold statue of him, and these three guys refused. So this is the story of that. So I'm going to try to read upside down and show you the picture, which is hard because I'm filming, but like, it's fine. King Nebuchadnezzar built a huge statue made of pure gold. Gather all my leaders together, he commanded. And once the king arrived, King Nebuchadnezzar said, see this big statue? He is our new god. Oh my. I don't know if anybody's really going to bow down to him. I don't know. Let's see what happens. He's beautiful, one of the leaders yelled from the crowd. Breathtaking, added another. Oh, this does not sound good. When we talked about the 10 Commandments a couple weeks ago, this sounds like an idol, right? This sounds like they're trying to worship something that's not God. So let's keep going. So this isn't a good thing that they're doing. He's the most awesome God I have seen all week, still another called out. The king then said, when the music starts, fall on your knees and bow. If you do not bow and worship, I shall throw you into the fiery furnace. That's really scary. But to bow down would be wrong. So I wonder what's going to happen next. Suddenly, the whole hillside was filled with loud and strange music. The large crowd fell to its knees and bowed down before the lifeless statue. Just then, a couple of the king's leaders peeked and saw three young men standing in the crowd. So there they are. There's three of them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I don't believe it, said the first. The nerve, replied the second. Let's tattle, they agreed. Your Majesty, they screamed and pointed. These men are not obeying you. Bring them to me now, demanded the king. Oh no, remember the king said that he was going to throw whoever didn't bow down to his statue into the fiery furnace? I mean, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are doing the right thing, but I would be really scared. They were three of the king's wisest leaders. Their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. King Nebuchadnezzar pressed his face into theirs. I will give you one more chance. If you'll bow down now, I'll let you go. If you do not, I will throw you into the furnace. The king laughed. No god can save you from me. I don't think that's true. Our God can save us from anything. But let's see what these three do. Your Majesty, the three began, the God we serve cannot only save us from you, O king, but from your furnace of fire as well. Then, before Nebuchadnezzar could answer, they added, but even if our God doesn't, we still will not worship this gold statue. Wow. They stood up for what they believed in. They stood up for what's right, even though it's really scary. Because look at that guy. He does not look very nice. I would be scared of him. And a fiery furnace? Ooh. Then, Nebuchadnezzar's face twisted with rage, so he was super angry. Heat it up 7 times hotter, he shouted, and bring me my strongest soldiers to tie these men up. Nebuchadnezzar stomped his feet and screamed, do it now! Immediately the king's strongest soldiers tied Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and threw them into the furnace. The fire was so hot that some flames leaped out and instantly killed the soldiers. Nebuchadnezzar gasped and sprang to his feet. Didn't we throw only 3 men into the fire? How many men are there? 1, 2, 3. And then that's Nebuchadnezzar. He did not throw himself into fire. So there's 3 men. Why is he asking that question? Nebuchadnezzar gasped. There were 4. "Yes, your majesty," the people stuttered. "3, but there are now 4, the king said, "and the 4th one looks like a god." Who do you think is in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Nebuchadnezzar tiptoed closer to the furnace and called the young men to come out. Everyone crowded around them. "They're not burnt at all," one man shouted. "They do not even smell like smoke," said another. King Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praises to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who rescued them from the fire. He is powerful and should be worshipped." And the king bragged about their great faith and courage and gave them even greater positions of leadership in his kingdom. So that's that story. And I think it comes along with the same thing as Jesus walking on the water. When we are afraid, we can rely on God, and no matter how scary things seem or how scary the world gets, God's always going to be there with us in the fire or roller coaster or in the dark or in new places. I'm trying to think of any other things that I was afraid of, but yeah. All right. Love y'all. Bye.